Good morning, everyone. It's Dr. Sean here with another awesome pre-PT success story with Jordan. Jordan, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Dr. Brewer.
Hey, no problem. No problem. So first and foremost, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of tell people about your pre-PT journey, and then we'll talk about all these different programs you've gotten into, which is going to kind of blow people's minds. But talk about your journey to start out, and then we'll get into more of the specifics with what's happened with your application.
Yeah, of course. So when I started, the whole entire physical therapy realm as a whole started when I was like in 8th grade. I remember sitting in my mom's car and I knew I wanted to go into the medical field, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And so she handed me a pamphlet of all these different medical jobs, and I was just searching through, and I looked at physical therapy and I read it. That was like the only one I read. I remember like looking at all the titles. I'm like, no, no, no. Then I looked at physical therapy and I remember looking at the pictures and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. So I read the whole description and I was like, that seems like a job that I could do. That seems like a job that is in the medical field, but also in health and wellness and exercise, something that I was really into as an 8th grader. And so I said, okay, let's research this. And I researched it from the time I was in 8th grade to my senior year in high school. I really looked at the job, the qualifications for the job, you know, how to get into schools and everything like that. I just looked at physical therapy for the entirety since middle school through high school. And then once I got into college, I went to university right away. And I remember my first year at university was very tough, not just because of the transition of coming straight out of high school into college, but I also had some family issues and family emergencies. I had a cousin that had died in a car crash in November, and then and about 2 weeks later, I had a cousin who was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So really just rocked my studies, and I was started to fail exams and fail tests, so much so that it kind of damaged my academic confidence. And so I decided as a pre-PT student to take a step back and to actually go to community college to finish the rest of my credentials, like not my undergrad degree, but more of like the basic general qualifications that I would need to get into the higher level classes in college. So after I finished all of those, I decided to go to Arizona State University to finish up my kinesiology degree. And I look back at that now, and that was the best decision that I made, because it really, after my first year, my academic confidence was at an all-time low. I cried every night. I was so scared I wasn't going to get into PT school. Like it was a general fear for me. Like I would wake up. I remember actually studying so much my first year. I would wake up. I would make myself wake up to study. Like I would be talking in my sleep, but studying in my sleep. Like that's how stressed out I was about my grades. And taking a step back and going to community college really helped me kind of calm down, get my confidence back, so that way I can get into these schools that I was able to get into and feel more confident in going into different things. Like I went into research and I went into physical therapy clubs, and being able to take time away from my studies to do other things that the PT application they kind of look at, and to beef that up. So that's kind of like my journey and my whole journey in a nutshell from pre-PT to now.
That is great. Thank you for sharing and being transparent about that. But wow, 8th grade. That's just and I can only imagine when you have your sights set on something for so long, and to feel like now that we're at our critical moment and to see it kind of like not going the way you planned, that's tough. That's hard.
Yeah.
So good for you for finding a plan, sticking to it, and persevering through all that. So one thing I definitely wanted to bring up, because a lot of pre-PTs struggle with this aspect of the application. How did you go about getting research experience?
It's kind of funny because I remember there was this one professor in my undergrad when I was at community college, she's like, we sat down and we were talking because we were really good friends. I was actually a secretary for the Exercise Science and Nutrition Club at Glendale Community College. And I sat down and I was talking with her. I'm like, yes, I'm going to ASU. And she was writing me a letter of recommendation to actually get into PT Club earlier so that way I could go to earlier meetings. And she's like, what do you think about research? And I was like, that's something that I've always been asked. And I was just kind of like hesitant. I was like, I don't know about research. I mean, research is very iffy because, of course, generally what everybody thinks of research is, science, beakers, lab coat,
Right.
white, sterile. And she's like, no, you need to go into research. It'll really help you and really it'll like put a feather in your cap. And I said, okay. And so I remember I walked into this one kinesiology professor's office. Her name is Tana Bowman, and she is the greatest probably mentor someone can have. And I sat down and I was like, where do I do research? And she was like, you want to do research, but you want to be a physical therapist? I'm like, yes, I do, but I want to be able to kind of get a feeling of what research is like, so that way I know for a fact that I want to be a physical therapist, or what I can do as a physical therapist and what research can give me as a physical therapist, so that way I can end up treating my patients with more of an evidence-based practice approach. And she's like, okay, I'm a part of this group. It's called the Metabolic Translational Health Team. Let me get you set up for a meeting. And she set me up for a meeting. She gave me the invite and everything like that, and the area code and everything. And I remember the first meeting that I had, and I think I've told you this before, I walked in and I was so confident, and I just was walking in and I did not see the glass door. And I slammed into the glass door in front of the head of the Metabolic Translational Health Team, Matt Booman, and his colleague. And I said, okay, I could cry or I could laugh about this. And I remember just laughing, opening the door, sitting down and saying hi to everybody. And just asking a whole bunch of questions to try to get out of this, like the embarrassment that I just caused myself. So yeah, I literally just went into someone's office and I was like, if you're going to do it now, you're going to do it now. If you're not, you're never going to do it. So I sat down, I said, what about research? And she gave me a whole list. And it was great because right after the Metabolic Translational Health Team meeting, Dr. Matt Booman, he actually is the one whose lab I work for. He was like, how do you feel about being a lab intern? And I was like, I'll do anything. Sure. So that's one thing that I do have to say for other pre-PTs out there. Do not be afraid to ask about research, and do not be afraid to do anything. They like it, especially in PT interviews, to say, do you want to know what? I can do anything, and I'm willing to try my hardest to be out there and to get out there and to do something that I'm not comfortable with. Because I wasn't comfortable with research when I first started. It was something definitely foreign to me, but I learned, and I was willing to learn, and it's actually one of the best experiences that I've had, and it's really made me think about and flesh out my whole PT plan, my PT career.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And I think a lot of other people would benefit just from that. Like, so many people are hesitant to ask because they're afraid of being like rejected or whatever, right? But the whole point of it is, if you ask, and if a professor, like the first professor that you asked, she didn't necessarily have a project, but she knew of someone, right? And so she could pass you along to someone else. My experience was similar in my undergrad. I talked to one of my mentors, and she said, well, I don't have anything right now, but this other professor does. So just be willing to ask and be willing to try new things. And having research is super important, because that's what a lot of physical therapy professors, they do research. That's a part of their job, is they need to do research. So that they can see that you have experience with that, you understand literature and things like that, it makes a huge difference. So props and good job. And I think that's a good plug for other people to continue to look into those options.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get to the fun part. So tell us about the schools you applied to and which ones you got into.
I applied for a plethora of schools just because I knew the whole application pool was going to be competitive, and it is just competitive for PT in general, no matter what the year. I mean, we were in a pandemic, so it was a little bit easier. I feel like the pool was a little bit smaller, but competitive nonetheless. So I applied to in Arizona, and I have to like think of all the list of schools that I applied to. I applied to A.T. Still University in Mesa, Arizona. I applied to Midwestern University in Glendale. I applied to Midwestern University in Downers Grove. I applied to Plymouth University, Duke University, Mayo University out in Rochester. I applied to Thomas Jefferson University. I applied to Creighton University. I applied to Jamestown University out in North Dakota. There's a whole list. I applied to a ton. And there's 2 more in there that I totally didn't, 3 actually, that I didn't get to. And the one that I chose to go to is actually Midwestern University, and I have it right here. So I have paraphernalia already. So I mean, it was awesome. That was like my number 1 choice, and I got in, and I'm very, very excited. And it's amazing and awesome, and just something that I didn't think going into the application process that I was even going to get an interview for, and I did, and then I even got in, which I was ecstatic. I was screaming on the phone with the admissions counselor, and she was so excited for me, and she was screaming with me, and it was a beautiful moment. So
fun. All that hard work goes to that moment, and it pays off 100%.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So so that was what you said, 9 programs you got
9, and I'm missing 3. I know I have some others.
There's just too many. That's so good. Good job, Jordan. And I think, to your credit, since you've been starting since 8th grade, sounds like you've been doing tons of research on the programs that are the best options for you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it goes to show that if you plan it out and you really target the programs that you're grooming your application for, and then you can tailor it to meet the things they're looking for, you're going to have a much higher rate of success. And
yes,
the proof is in the pudding, right? So why Midwestern?
I chose Midwestern for a lot of reasons. My mom was employed there for a number of years and is still employed there. So I know the campus. As a teenager, I walked the campus. I remember going to med camp at Midwestern, and I think that's kind of like what sold it for me, because I remember med camp, and it sounds so nerdy, med camp, but we were walking around, and I saw this PT clinic, and it was like one of the very first days at med camp, and it was a week-long med camp, and we went to PT first. And I remember this game that they had, and they had us all on crutches, and I was a gymnast, so I've used a lot of crutches in my life. And so I knew how to do crutches the best. And I remember the dean of PT actually being there, and her and I just talking about physical therapy, and we really made a connection. And so that's one thing that went into it. Is I just remember meeting all the professors, meeting the faculty, and meeting all the people that are going to be there for me for the next 3 years, and continuously meeting them, and continuously having even mentors through that school. Because my mom works there, I was able to talk to a lot of the physical therapists and ask, okay, so what do you guys look for? So that's kind of like the reason why I chose Midwestern, is because it was familiar to me. That, and it's cheaper to live at home and go to school near my house than it is to move somewhere far off and to stay in school there. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason is that they have the technology. They have such new technology. They have a Karen apparatus, and I don't know if you probably know what this is. It's this, and I'll just explain it for the viewers. It's like a walking path. It's for stroke victims a lot of the time, and it is it's like a treadmill, but not a treadmill. It's like a treadmill floor, and you have this huge screen, and you are walking along this path, and if there is like a pebble or a rock on like the trail, it modifies to where you can actually feel the pebble in the groundwork.
Yeah,
and
they're amazing machines.
so cool. So that's another reason, is the technology at Midwestern is something that I felt like I wasn't going to get at other universities. That in the training, and they're really focused on making clinicians, not even just research. They really want to focus on you as a clinician and get you prepared as a clinician. So that's something that I really found that really resonated with me. And that's the reason why I chose Midwestern. I'm so excited, and I'm so comfortable already at that campus. So I know where all the buildings are, and so it's not going to be a stress to move or to find my classes, which is something that I really look forward to.
It's home.
Home.
Home already.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great. Thank you for sharing the thought process with that. So let's talk about you finding physical therapy application coach. How did you find out about me?
It was interesting. So when I started PT Cast, it was my very first time starting PT Cast. I had no clue what I was doing. I remember opening PT Cast. I did like the first box of information, and I looked at the rest of it, and I clicked out, and I was like, that's a lot of work. I'll do that tomorrow. And it was just something that, just keeps piling. And I was like, okay. So I did the application up until the essays. And I kind of skipped around, which I know you're not supposed to, but I kind of skipped around, and I was like, I'm so scared to write these essays.
Yeah.
And I just looked at, how do you write a PT Cast essay? And one of your videos came up, and you had such good advice for how to write a PT Cast essay. I really loved the fact that you weren't just like, because I watched a boatload of YouTube videos, and a lot of them, they were just very generic, very much the same of, just tell them about your experiences and, make it as detailed as possible. It was just really kind of generic, and it really just didn't give me enough information to chew on. Your videos helped me in such an amazing way of show me, don't tell me. And I feel like that's something that has definitely set me apart as a PT, pre-PT interviewee, is I showed them. Even in my interviews, in my essays, I showed them. I didn't tell them. And you can see it on their faces when you are interviewing, that they are so excited that, you have an interesting story. You want to engage them. And a lot of the times they asked me about my essays. They said, we really loved your essay. Can you explain more about this? And it was awesome, because I had something that I could actually go and talk to them about, and they were really interested and invested in the story. So that's one thing that really resonated with me. And even when I was in my sophomore year in college, I remember being in this class, and it was an intro into kinesiology class. And they always said that the people that are going to make the most money are the people that can actually tell stories. Show them, don't tell them. Mm-hmm. And that's the first thing that popped into my head when I saw your videos. So thank you so much for that advice. And it was just amazing advice, like something that I didn't hear anywhere else. And that's something that set you apart. So that's how I found you.
Awesome. Videos, YouTube. Thank you again, the salesman, 24 hours a day, YouTube. So you answered kind of my next question quite a bit, but how do you feel like, why do you feel like other people should use physical therapy application coach?
I believe that you should use physical therapy application coaches because Dr. Brewer gives you the tools to be successful in not only an essay, but in an interview, and just in general, being able to talk to people about your interests. You don't want to be the bland, bullet point type of person, especially when this is something that you want. You want to describe why you want it. You want them to feel just as invested as you are in your journey. And I believe that physical therapy application coach training, that you are able to take your writing to a whole nother level, your interviewing skills to a whole nother level, something that they don't teach you in school. They teach you how to write an essay, a three-pronged essay, and that's it. Physical therapy application coach takes that three-pronged essay, and they say, okay, why this? Show me. Why this? Show me. why this? And it makes you so much more relatable to the human populace and just to interviewers in general, you know? So that's the reason why you need to choose physical therapy application coach,
It's a mouthful.
because it's an amazing service that you're just going to learn and you're actually going to carry through the rest of your life. That's even when I came out of my interviews, I remember thinking, okay, this is like this is Jordan being an interviewee for the rest of my life. I will forever show them and not just tell them.
Well, you got it then. You got the message, because these are skills that hopefully will carry with you for the rest of your life if you really internalize them. And the individuals that I've worked with that have really internalized it have come back to me and said that it's led to future opportunities to help them. So you got it. That's perfect. And that's what I want. Is I don't want to just have you do something just for PT school, but something that's transformative, a skill that can carry you throughout your life. And it always makes me feel better when we've been taught to write a certain way and it's so boring and unrelatable and no one likes it, and using basic concepts, making stuff engaging and relatable, and people are excited to meet you when you show up for your interview, and they're like, oh, they feel like they already kind of know you. And I'll tell you, like, my experience was the same when I was at NAU and I was reviewing essays. I remember 2 of the 17 that I read that I was excited to meet the person. And the other ones were just so boring and bland, and they just didn't give us a lot of information.
Right.
And the other 2, as soon as they walked in the room, I was like, I was excited to hear what they had to say. And it made a huge difference.
Exactly. And do you want to know what I found? I found that they don't have to do Fisher questions with me. Like a lot of I had group interviews, and they did a lot of Fisher questions with people who I feel like they didn't get enough from their essays. Of course, I didn't read their essays, but you could tell because there were Fisher questions, well, what do you do for your job, or how does that make you feel? Whereas me, they put into more detailed questions and more detailed work, which I felt just boosted me as an applicant 100 times, above everyone else. So that's definitely, absolutely.
It's kind of like a speed dating process, right? Because
yes,
they're determining who matches. And if your profile gives them more details about you, so you can just start asking follow-up questions instead of trying to lay that foundation. And most people it's not that they are a bad applicant. It's that they don't take the time to think through these things and to have them ready to go. And that's what you did. You took it seriously. You said, hey, I've got all these unique experiences. Like what's cool about me is my life, right? And the people you've worked with, the places you've been, the activities you've been involved in, that's what makes you you. And that's the only unique thing you have to work with. And so sharing that with people in a compelling and an interesting way is not something that we're taught. And that's what it all comes down to. It's not rocket science. And if anyone's willing to put in the time and the effort and the energy like you did, they can have results like you did. And that's what's exciting to me. That's what gets me wanting to continue to build this message. It's about being able to focus and to target your application on programs that meet the criteria that you're looking for, and being able to share your story, your attributes, your strengths in a way that they see you for the person that you are, instead of just like you said, the Fisher questions or those superficial questions. So
yes,
mission accomplished.
Absolutely.
Jordan, you did it.
I did. I'm so excited. I don't even think people can understand how happy I am and just how honored I am to just even know you and to get advice from you. And
oh dear.
and it's amazing. Like, he really did help me. Like, it's no joke. And I got it. Like I said, I got into 8 out of the 9 schools I interviewed. I interviewed for 9 out of the 11 schools I applied for. So, I mean, like you said, the proof is in the pudding. I did it, and it was the written essays and the interviews that really helped.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the shout out. I consider myself privileged to know you as well. And I'm excited to see how things continue to pan out for you at Midwestern, we'll have to do some kind of a follow-up video or something after your first semester and touch base and see how everything's going.
Absolutely. I'm open for that.